My name is Marianne Waddick, and I'm a senior software engineer at Raytheon. My presentation is The Wonderful World of DevSecOps and Harry Potter. Our agenda for today is my biography, an introduction to DevSecOps and Harry Potter, and we'll be discussing the terms for DevSecOps and any questions. My biography. I am a cyber engineer at Raytheon, and I've been there for 29 years, both in software and the cyber engineering departments. I have an MSIA in cybersecurity. I have certs in secure coding, and I'm working on other certs right now. I work with programs implementing secure coding, static code analysis, and working in their DevSecOps processes. I try to stress the importance of using secure coding practices and help with the software development phases and making sure that they keep their code as secure as possible. We all know that over the years, a lot of programs didn't understand exactly what secure coding was. And now that we're actually using DevSecOps, we're finding a lot of bugs in code. Introduction. Okay. Why did I come up with this? Well, introduction, we're going to talk about likening DevSecOps to the Harry Potter books and movies, as well as their timeline. I'm going to give you some analogies that will tie them to both the movies and the books and kind of give you a better understanding so that you can kind of remember the phases of DevSecOps a little bit better. The people that I work with, not necessarily the security people, but the software people don't understand what DevSecOps and all of the phases of the process actually are. We have to explain what all the different steps are. And if I can liken it to something that maybe they would understand, like Harry Potter, it might make it more fun and something that they would remember. So, definition of DevSecOps. Basically, we all heard DevOps when it first came out, and DevOps came out and said, okay, we were going to actually add security in where we could, and security was added on top of DevOps. It was security as code added just as a endpoint. And it was kind of added on top or where they could find the place to put it in. But now DevSecOps is actually including security where it needs to be, actually in the beginning and where it needs to be all the way through the processes, so that it's not just in where, kind of, yeah, we need to do security sometimes, so let's just stick it here, or let's stick it there, and hey, we do security. Yeah, we're doing security. So for those that don't know about Harry Potter, yeah, I've got my Harry Potter things. If you don't know what this is, then you're a muggle, non-magical person. Harry Potter is a series of books and movies describing a young wizard, Harry, and his friends, Ron and Hermione. It takes them through their daily lives, over the years, through school and out, through good times and bad, and they fight evil along the way. And they get to use magic along the way. Step 1 of the DevSec process. Collecting code and building it in a version control tool. I've included a couple of the different tools that can be used for version control. A lot of us are used to using this as like just a CM tool. But now that we're actually doing a lot more with a CM tool, we're actually calling it version control tool, because we're actually doing more than just one build at a time. We may actually be doing multiple versions at the same time. I've actually got one program that's actually doing multiple versions of a package or multiple versions of code at the same time. So this is being done at right now. I know of a program that's doing this. So using a version control tool is more common, where before we used to just call it CM. And doing builds, you could do them nightly. You could do them as code's checked in. It depends on how much code check-ins you're doing. I've got some programs that do builds on a nightly basis because they do a lot of code check-ins. I have some, they do it whenever their code is checked in because they don't do a lot of code check-ins. So doing it when code is checked in is more feasible for them. So for step one for Harry Potter, for people that would understand this, think of Hogwarts as the Hogwarts students going to Diagon Alley. They have to collect everything, just like collecting everything in the CM tool. They had to go to Hogwarts, and so they need all of the stuff they need to go to school. They need to collect their uniforms, their books, their cauldrons to get them do their magical potions and things like that. They need their quills to write all their school work on, and they need their parchment. I don't even know what parchment's actually made of, but and then they have to take the Hogwarts Express to school. They get on the train and they put on their uniforms and their robes to go to school. I actually got to ride the Hogwarts Express when I went to Universal. That's where I got my wand. That was actually kind of fun. I did that on my birthday. Step 2 is unit testing. And unit tests can be written in a lot of different programs. It can be used for a lot of different languages. We actually have some programs at our building that actually do use or write unit tests. And I'm not sure at this time if we actually have any that are actually integrating them. But it would be something that could be actually integrated into your pipeline. But they could be written for a lot of different languages, and they could actually be integrated into your build pipeline. And once you have them in, they could actually be for this step. They could actually be used for Jenkins, used as promoted builds. Actually go from one step to the next step to the next step, and if it actually passes your unit test, you actually can go to the next step and just keep going on in your actual pipeline. For Harry Potter, students arrive at Hogwarts, getting off the train, getting to the school. Their testing is done by what's called the sorting hat. Oh, you can't even see my picture. The sorting hat actually tests each student when they get to school, and they are tested by this sorting hat by the values that the students have, and they go into their houses, and that becomes their family for the years they are at Hogwarts. The next step in the DevSec process is the code quality analysis phase. All of these different tools can be used for what's called code quality. It can be for either code quality or security issues can be found. And a lot of these different tools can be run against a lot of different languages. Some of these have different platforms, different languages. They can all be run during the build process or after. And these issues can be found. You could actually return a report and say, hey, too many issues were found. You don't want to continue going on to the next phase. Or you might want to say, hey, there's a certain number of highs. You don't want to continue. Come up with a different type of criteria that you just want to say, hey, something like that is something that you want to check. So many security issues, things like that. And it's something that it would be very dependent on what type of program or the code that you're actually running these tools on. We have a couple of the tools on this list at our site that we're running, and several of the languages as well. For quality at Hogwarts, I've listed a couple quality magic mistakes that were made by students at Hogwarts. For instance, the polyjuice potion. Polyjuice is something that students can, or anyone can take, that could turn you into something else. It's usually for a person to turn into another person. Unfortunately, Hermione turned into a cat by accident. You're not supposed to turn into a non-human, and she turned into a cat. That was not supposed to happen. She made a potion and it didn't turn out quite right, and it blew up in her face. Another quality mistake. One of the other people in the big three in Hogwarts tried to make a cup out of his rat, and it had a tail. That wasn't quite supposed to happen either. And he had a broken wand, and he tried to cast a spell on somebody because he said something bad about his future girlfriend, and it backfired, caused him to throw up slugs. Basically, the whole idea about this slide is that basically magic needs to be perfect, just like software. And well, software can't be perfect. I mean, we're all human, but needs to be as close to good and as secure as we can make it. So quality and secure code is what's important. So step 4 is packaging. When code is built, it needs to be packaged in order to be able to release it. And there's different ways to release. And that would actually depend on how your customer or how it needs to be deployed. So some of the different ways that it can be released is through a jar for Java, WAR for web, an EAR, enterprise architecture, or install shield. Most people know what an install shield file is. I mean, I used to write them a lot years ago. And there's many other types of archives files that could be used for packaging, or you could just bundle them up some other type of way, but they all need to be packaged some secure way. So this is the packaging step, but you need to make sure that however they are packaged, it has to be securely done, and it needs to be done in a manner that it is also done someplace that is secure. So for Harry Potter, when you get ready to package and deliver, they use a couple different methods. Letters and packages can be sent by owl. Unfortunately, you have to watch out because they bite. They also sometimes don't get there quite as fast as you may want them to be. Notes can be delivered by Patronus, and they could also be delivered by paper airplane. The Patronus is also used for other things, but the Patronus was used when the Ministry fell, for those that do know the actual movies, and that one was kind of a cool instance. Step 5 is the pre-post environment. So this is where you're actually setting up your environment for deployment. So this is the first time we see the word ops. This is where we're actually setting up the operational environment for getting it ready for actual deployment. This is where you're setting up your space for storing it for deployment. So some of the actual software that can be used for setting up your operational environment include Rackspace, Azure, VMware, AWS, Jira. These are all the different software tools that can be used for setting up your environment. But these also have security concerns. Make sure that however you set it up, make sure you think about security very first time you think about your operational environment. Step 5, this is where Ron and Hermione and Harry, they have to start thinking about, okay, yes, we have to, they're starting to think, okay, we have to collect, they're collecting their friends together, and they're going to become the army to fight evil. They know that they are going to be the ones who have to fight the bad people who are coming to hurt the magical world. And they know that right now there is no one who really can protect them except for Harry. And so they're only kids, but they know that they are the ones who have to do what has to be done. Unfortunately, a lot of people are against them, but they are the ones that know that they're starting their baseline, their beginning environment here at school. And so this is the beginning environment right here. Okay, acceptance testing. This is where you've got your environment set up, and you have your test teams use the environment. You have the package is ready to deploy, but you're using tests to make sure, and use the promoted builds to make sure that once it's actually through the test, that the tests can go to the next phase. It's going and saying, yes, it's past this, so we can go to the next phase. Yes, it's got everything ready to deploy. But again, everything has to be going and going and going, but it has to be tested and secured along the way. And before you can actually continue on, it has to be approved by the customer or whoever is saying, this is what I want to go to the next phase. So it has to be through the acceptance part before it gets to the next phase. So whoever has made that decision to say, this is what is in this acceptance testing or the requirements for this acceptance, you have to make sure that those tests are here. For Harry Potter, they have their testing. They have what they call OWL, or ordinary wizarding level tests. And they have NEWTs, nastily exhausting wizarding tests that they take at the end of their 7th year at Hogwarts. Each one, well, OWLs lead up to the NEWTs. And if you pass your OWLs with so many, you can actually go to a certain career. And if you get so many NEWTs, then you can actually get the career that you want. But it doesn't always work out, because there have been there were cases in both the books and the movies where certain students didn't actually finish their exams, or they didn't actually finish even Hogwarts school. For instance, two of the brothers of one of our three didn't even finish school at all. They took their exams, but they didn't even finish school. So, but they opened up a very famous Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, and they became very famous and very rich. So they didn't have to actually finish Hogwarts, these two, but normally you would have to finish at a wizarding school. So just take that into account, that these two didn't have to finish their tests. Step 7. So this is the production environment. This is where everything that was ready to be deployed to the operational environment is in the operational environment and ready to deploy, is saved. So again, this is with Rackspace, the Azure, the VMware, the AWS, and the Jira. Everything that is now there in the operational environment, this is where everything is now. Everything's gone through all your steps and is there. Your customer has got it there. It's all there and ready to go to your customer. So how do you get it from there? Is it secured? Is it now all to the point where it's in the right format? Is everything tested fully, and is it in the right place and formats, everything ready for your customer to go to your customer? Is it? So there's still steps at this point, even though it's the last step, there's things you have to think about. So, you have to think about security even at this point. But this is where we have to think about the Harry Potter, because they beat the Voldemort and the Death Eaters, which they were the bad guys that I talked about. They were the really, really bad guys. Hermione went back to school. She took her test after Voldemort was killed. He was the really, really bad guy. Ron became an Auror. He was a dark wizard catcher. He went around and he caught all the bad guys. He married Hermione. She became a minister for magic. She became the head of all the magic, all the wizards. Harry became the Auror and married Ron's sister. But this wasn't the end. So Ron never went back to school. Harry never went back to school. But Hermione did. So not everybody has to finish. At least that's the way they did it in Harry Potter. I mean, they were able to do what they wanted to do without having to finish the whole process. So if we look at this, this is the whole steps in review. I mean, check out and build code, CM and build code, students get ready to go to school. Unit testing, run unit tests, students get sorted into houses. The code quality, use code quality analysis tools. Everyone makes mistakes, even in Harry Potter world. In DevSecOps, package, deliver code for release. In Harry Potter, OWL delivery, just think of it that way. In pre-post environment, set up your environment for deploying to the operational, but that's the setup phase. For Harry Potter world, they were just getting ready to fight. This was the students teaching themselves. in the next acceptance testing phase, and that's where the tools are getting ready to deploy. That's where the owls are, they take their owl and their newt exams. And then for the production environment, that's where the code is ready to deploy to the operational environment, but there's still security needs to be done. And then for the Harry Potter, evil's gone, but they continue to live their lives through their kids. Not sure if you caught that. That picture I had on that last page, all the Harry Potter people, they all had their own kids and they all went off to Harry Potter or to Hogwarts, and their kids went off to Hogwarts and lived on through them. So my conclusion, even though all steps are recommended to make a secure software package, not all programs can implement it in the very beginning. And as we saw through Harry Potter, good one in the end, but not everyone completed the steps in order to graduate. So if your program can start with verifying build files, they can add unit tests, and it will depend on how much your customer is requiring, how much time you have to implement. But in the end, try not to bypass any best cyber practices and make sure you include all the security that you can at every single step throughout the practice, every single step. Don't forget any security throughout the process. So if you have any questions, again, my name is Marianne Waddick. That is my hacker handle on Twitter. So if there's any questions, you can hit me up later on. Thank you.